Everyone grabs his beer, and let's talk some true crime. On the eve of Friday the 13th, 1995, 4 teenage students took a walk into the desolate woods near the campus of the University of Tennessee. 3 of them have belonged to a satanic cult, and the 4th was a teen from Florida who only tagged along for free weed. But what happened to her in the woods that night has sparked a fascination that has spanned over 20 years. What is up the Woo crew? Today, we are going to cover a horrific crime spurred by jealousy, one that would leave a young girl mutilated with a pentagram carved into her torso and a missing piece of her skull taken from her body. There is no doubt that evil showed its face in the Tennessee woods that night in 1995. But did the devil make them do it? Let's get into it. Christa Gale Pike was born on March 10, 1976, in West Virginia. Her devout Christian grandmother raised her, and her playground was the slaughterhouse where her grandfather worked as a child. Christa was allegedly abused by her grandmother's friend, Ernest, and sadly, it is speculated that if this abuse occurred, it might have started when she was still in diapers at the age of 12, her grandmother died, and following it, Christa attempted to take her own life for the first time. Stricken with grief, it was later reported that Christa began to self-mutilate in different ways in an attempt to cope. Matters only worsened for her when she had to move in with her mother, Carissa, who at the time was a licensed registered nurse and was allegedly an alcoholic. They did not have a great relationship, to say the least. Christa's mother ended up taking her troubled young daughter to see a shrink. However, most of the shrinks that Christa visited didn't provide enough aid for her mental health, and things were only worsened by the revolving men in her mom's life. In an interview, Christa recalled one of her mom's boyfriend, saying he made this leather strap with a wooden handle on it specifically to beat the hell out of me with, and he made this thing and hung it up on my bedroom wall like it was decoration. These factors undoubtedly were influential on Christa's psyche, which may have led to her demonic shift in behavior. When 18 years old, Christa was enrolled in the Jobs Corps program at the Knoxville campus of the University of Tennessee. Job Corps was described as providing vocational training for disadvantaged youth in the 90s, giving them a chance for a promising career. Christa was there to study nursing, following in her mother's footsteps. It was here that Christa would meet Colleen Slemmer, who was enrolled in the same program. To say that they were friends would be inaccurate. Christa suspected Colleen was attempting to seduce her 17-year-old boyfriend. The boyfriend to Daryl. The ship was caught in the middle of this love triangle. At one point, Christa had traveled back home for a holiday while Daryl stayed behind in Knoxville. It was only because of Christa's absence that he turned his attention to Colleen. He later admitted that he and Colleen did hook up during that break. However, he never confirmed the fling to Christa, leading her to act upon only her suspicions. In an interview with Daryl that said Colleen, "I didn't even know she existed. She approached me." Friends of Colleen Slemmer denied that she was attempting to snatch away Daryl from Christa. But with obvious tension between the two young women, Christa attempted to extend an olive branch to Colleen by offering her some of the cannabis she had stashed away in the woods. But that was not Christa's true intention. The bag of weed she claimed was hidden was only the hook to reel Colleen to her grim fate. The night before, Christa admitted to her friend Kimmel Oil that she was planning on killing Colleen, adding, "It wasn't just Christa that voiced her sinister interests to Daryl." A few days before the incident would tell another student that he had to make a human sacrifice because the celestial bodies were in alignment. At approximately 8 p.m. on Thursday, January 12th, the 4 students signed out of their dorms, Christa Pike to Daryl ship Colleen Slemmer and another friend named Shadow A. Peterson. With the hopes of getting high with the group, Colleen didn't appear to have a problem walking into the woods. They lead Colleen to an isolated area in Tyson Park near the University of Tennessee campus. It was here where the grisly acts would unfold. On that chilly Tennessee night, the tension grew thick between the group when Christa confronted Colleen, accusing her of stealing her boyfriend away. As Colleen again denied the accusation, she quickly realized that they weren't in the woods to smoke pot, as she had eagerly anticipated. Christa and Daryl were armed with a small meat cleaver and box cutter. While she, Dola, stayed on the perimeter as a lookout, they were ready for a fight. Suddenly, Christa grabbed Colleen's head and slammed her face into her knee. She then threw Colleen to the ground and, with an unrelenting fury, kicked and punched her mercilessly. Colleen cried out, "Why are you doing this to me?" As the forceful blows continued, raining down on her, laying in the mud and sobbing, Colleen mustered the strength to stand and attempt to escape. She tried to run away several times but to no avail. The first time resulted in Christa slicing a long cut across her back. Her attempts were also thwarted by Daryl, who intercepted Colleen and pinned her to the ground. It was here that Christa unsheathed the box cutter blade and sliced Colleen once again, this time across her stomach. Colleen begged Christa for her life, telling her that if she would let her go that she would quote walk back to Florida without stopping at Job Corps to pick up her stuff. Christa told Colleen to shut up, saying, "It's harder to hurt someone when talking to you." She later admitted that the more Colleen tried to talk, the more she kicked her in the face. The unrelenting and brutal torture paused momentarily when Christa thought she heard a noise in the nearby woods. Left Colleen lying on the cold, damp ground while Christa briefly investigated the sound. Shortly thereafter, Christa returned and proceeded to lacerate the helpless girl's throat, cutting it several times with the box cutter. Amazingly, Colleen once again found the strength to sit up and plead for her life and even attempt another escape. But as soon as she started to flee, Christa threw a rock, striking her squarely in the back of the head to Daryl, then joined in and hit her with rocks as well. Christa explained how after regaining control, she remembered the specific sounds of Colleen's labored breathing. A medical examiner later described how Colleen was drowning in her own blood. After about 30 minutes, Daryl took the box cutter and carved a pentagram into Colleen's chest as their final mark. The medical examiner later testified, saying the area around each wound was red in appearance, indicating that the heart had still been beating. When the wound was inflicted, he added, none of the aforementioned wounds would have rendered the victim unconscious with every slash across her skin. Colleen surely felt the agony of all the horrors that were being done to her. She suffered through nearly an hour before Christa picked up a large chunk of broken asphalt and repeatedly struck Colleen in the head as Colleen's blood collected on the cold forest floor. Her pain and agony finally came to a chilling end while she, Dola, kept watch on Daryl and Christa dragged Colleen's body to a nearby area where there was a cluster of trees, and she was placed on top of a pile of dirt and debris. But before leaving the site, Christa took a piece of Colleen's fragmented skull and placed it in the pocket of her jacket as a trophy of what she had just done. Allegedly, Satanists believe that the body must behold for the soul to be released, and by taking part of Colleen, her soul would be kept captive. Then they removed 2 of her ID cards and a pair of black gloves that Colleen had been wearing to Daryl, and Christa rubbed the mud from the bottom of their shoes over the bloodstains that covered their pants in an attempt to hide any evidence. After leaving the isolated part of the University of Tennessee campus, they walked to a nearby Texaco gas station to dispose of the ID cards and gloves. From there, they returned to their dorm rooms around 10 p.m., as if nothing happened. 4 people signed out that night, but only 3 signed back in once. Back at the dorms, Christa revisited her friend Kim Il-Oil. Oh, this time, Christa wasn't feeling mean, as Kim had described before. Instead, she was dancing around in circles, smiling and singing like an eager child wanting to show off. Christa bragged to Kim of the atrocities she had just committed earlier in the night. She even showed Kim the piece of Colleen's skull that she had taken with her. Colleen's butchered remains were discovered the next morning by a university employee. Initially thinking he stumbled upon an animal carcass, the man went in closer for further inspection. In horror, he realized he was looking at a human body when he noticed the naked torso at 8 a.m. on Friday. The 13th Knoxville police arrived along with the university campus police. One of the first responding officers described Colleen's head, saying, "I thought I was looking into her face. But everything was so badly mangled, I couldn't be sure Christa was careless in more ways than one." Following the murder, she returned to the crime scene the next day, only to be denied entry to the part of the woods she intended to go to. Later on, she left behind her jacket, the same one with a piece of Colleen's skull in an administrator's office on campus. The jacket was turned over to the police, where they discovered the piece of skull. All three students, Christa Pike to Daryl Shipp and Shadow Olaf Peterson, were promptly arrested. Within the next 36 hours, Christa was the first to be questioned. The talking teen waived her rights to remain silent and admitted she was at fault for Colleen's death. Her entire confession, once typed out, was 42 pages in length. As if that wasn't enough proof, police found Colleen Slemmer's blood soaked into the jeans Christa had worn. That night a cooperative, Christa, took police back to the Texaco station, where they found Colleen's ID cards and accompanied them back to the woods to describe the events. In further detail into Daryl's dorm room, police ended up finding a satanic Bible. The trial took place on March 22, 1996. Christa was prosecuted by Bill Crabtree, an assistant Knoxville County District Attorney. In his opening statement to jurors, he began explaining that the evidence within this case is of an act so vile, so heinous, so atrocious, so despicable, as bad or worse as anything you've ever seen in a movie, read in a novel or dreamed in your worst nightmare. During the trial, Christa cried continuously in front of the courtroom. The tears didn't affect the jurors, as it only took a few short hours for them to deliberate and convict her on both charges. The jurors described the young girl as having angel's face but a devil's heart. Christa Pike was found guilty of first-degree murder and given the death penalty on March 22, 1996, to Daryl. The Shipp was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, and Shadow Peterson received probation since she agreed to become an informant against the other two. She pled guilty to being an accessory after the fact. At only 20 years old, Christa became the youngest woman to be sentenced to death in the United States. Only a few days after finding out that she would be executed, she sent an unsettling note to Daryl Shipp writing, "Please write me. I miss you so much. Do you see what I get for trying to be nice to them? I went ahead and bashed her brains out, so she died quickly. Instead of letting her bleed to death and suffer more, and they fry me. Ain't that some? Please write me and tell me what you're feeling. Also, tell your lawyer if he wants me to testify for you. I will love you for the rest of my life." Christa signed off on the letter as the little devil. As the frenzied spectacle surrounding the satanic killing died down, Christa Pike would capture the media's attention once more. On August 24, 2000, and after 5 years into her sentence, Christa attempted to kill again. She was almost successful in strangling Patricia Jones, a fellow inmate, to death. She claims she didn't intend to kill Jones, but in a phone call that she made to her mother, she can be heard saying, "I bet you if she gets near me, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to succeed in this downtime. See, now I know the difference between premeditated murder and what happened with Colleen. Because see, I premeditated the hell out of this. Sure did. If I'd have had 30 more seconds, we'd have a little chalk line out there in our rec pin, and that bitch would be gone somewhere again." A trial took place, and another guilty conviction for attempted first-degree murder was tacked onto Christa's already inescapable death sentence. At this point, her defense team extended an appeal to the federal court system. They requested that her fate be life in prison and not execution. They argued that she had mental illness and that capital punishment as administered in Tennessee is unconstitutional. But it was the last-ditch effort. Christa had to beg for her life to be spared. The legal team representing Christa's fight centered their defense on testimony attesting to the trauma she suffered early. Dr. Jonathan Henry Pincus, an expert in neurology, testified to the appeals court that Pike's brain had underdeveloped frontal lobes. In this part of the brain, a person's sense of right and wrong is managed, Pincus said. This was the result of Pike's mother abusing alcohol while she was still in the womb. He argued that this, combined with the turbulent adolescence, is to blame for Pike's actions. The appeals court upheld the previous ruling and sent Christa Pike back to death row, and Christa Pike remains the only woman in Tennessee awaiting execution. Although she has exhausted all of her appeals, she affirms that she should not be put to death. Now, 25 years later, Christa Pike remains locked away in her small concrete cell, contemplating all the events that transpired in her life. Regret, remorse, acceptance. Christa Gale Pike will likely eat her last meal one day, walk her last steps with shackled feet down the cell block, and take her final seat in the electric chair. Colleen Slemmer's family will then receive peace, knowing justice for their daughters. Heinous death will be finally and fatally served. Although the devil himself may not have been responsible for Christa Pike's actions that January night so long ago, it was the demons of her own tortuous past that may have led her to forego logic, reason, and all sense of human decency. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment, and make sure to hit the subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a video. /support. Thank you again for your support.